I was,
Recall?
yes, Mass DEP.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll need to ping GEI further. I would expect an answer in the morning from them to confirm that they were submitted and then to turn around and send us copies for our records. The other thing that on the last call with GEI, we talked about them notifying the potential bidders just to start to generate interest in the upcoming 2021 dredging of the harbor. That RFP will be going out shortly in early June. So we asked GEI to give the bidders, potential bidders, a heads up to generate interest. And then the last item that I have under engineering updates is we talked about contract stipulations on the April 26th call, and then we had the follow-up call on May the 3rd. And they're essentially were three primary areas or stipulations, if you will. So we've gone ahead, crafted language for that. Joe is taking a look at it, and the plan is to share it with Harry Turkanian as well. We took a copy of the latest proposal or contract document actually for professional services that that Will has. It read that and made a suggestion as to where we should insert the new language within that document, figuring that there will be a new professional services contract issued for 2021 dredging, and we'll put the new language in there after it goes through review with Harry and presumably outside counsel as well. Any questions on that?
No, I got a question on the back. If somebody's got a question on that, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alfred. I'll ask after.
The amended permit, we were supposed to see that some of the language or something for that before it went off. Other than the map they sent us, I guess I don't have a problem with that, providing it actually went off. So my question is, if it didn't go off, at this point, we may not make the deadline if they can't keep their stuff going. I mean, I've been concerned about this since the very beginning. Yes, and rightly so. I mean, that has been the gist of many conversations with GEI. What I'm trying to tell you is I don't feel warm and fuzzy over any of this.
Well, Alfred, what did you think of the engineer's response when you were on the call last Wednesday?
Well, my response started the week before that, Joe, when he said that they were filing it, but they hadn't decided what level they had to file at yet. So for him to tell us that everything was going to be okay, and then for him in a public, or I should say that in a dredge meeting, he hadn't decided which way to file it. At that point, it left me no confidence with him, because how can you decide what level you're going to be at for concerns if you don't even know what level you're filing at? I'm sorry, I was not. And then the last minute, I guess I'm totally frustrated with him over it. I mean, you know, the rest of the permits we have or we're working at, there's time to work at them. I mean, we've got a permit here that basically needs to go in a dredge pack or to certainly be somewhere addressable for a dredge packet, and he isn't even sure what we're going to have to file for. And then when he came back and said that he needed core samples, which I understand may be realistic, but he's not even sure if what he's proposed is going to pass, because he wasn't even sure, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but when he stated he had to apply for what they were going to do, and then to find out if what he was going to do actually met their requirements. So he still hasn't got a handle on this, unless I'm incorrect.
No, I think you're correct. These are my thoughts on it. The area of the amended permits, which I think is in the neighborhood of 2,000, 2,200 yards, it will definitely be addressed in the RFP because it'll be its own line item. So that work will progress. I think if the documents were not submitted last Friday, as had been promised as recently as last Wednesday, I think it's definitely time for us to involve some of the upper management of GEI. Rather than letting it persist and the clock run out on various tasks.
Because in my opinion, it's going to cost way more to dredge the edge of the piggyback area and then come back and do maintenance dredging there, because everything that's going to be left is going to be the hard to get areas. So, I mean, why would you not get in there and go the other 20 or 30 feet? And I think it's going to cost us a lot more money if this ends up on another program, even if we have another program to do it on.
Well, the other program, that dance card is going to be full also. We 2021 is pretty full as it is. 2022, I think, is going to be equally full based on the yardage in the mooring area too. So I agree with you that we really need to get it done in the 2021 season. So again, my suggestion is if the permits or the submittals didn't go in last Friday, then I think it is time to get hold of some of the other people within GEI in upper management. And if people have other suggestions, I'll certainly entertain that.
Well, that Alfred touched on my question is do we as the town have a say where they start first? Because if they started on that area that they didn't do during the piggyback behind the pilings, that would free up Will some time on the backside too.
Yeah, you're talking about do we have a say in the sequence that the dredging contractor works?
Right.
Yes, understood. Yeah, I think what we're headed on that is when we have the pre-bid meeting, we have several things that we want to throw out there that are important to us. And we'll certainly state our desire for that area. And if we have a preferred sequence, we'll do that too. We want to stay away from dictating means and methods, but we can be very, very straight up with our preferences. And then as part of it, and I think, Kevin, you may have suggested this, as part of the RFP, we are going to have the contractors, the bidders, submit their dredge plan in sequence so that we know what their plan is. At that point, we can have additional dialogue if it's appropriate, but we need to tell everyone, all the bidders at the get-go, that these are some things that are important to us.
But if we don't have the amendment permit in hand at the beginning of this, obviously it's going to get kicked to the end of it, which may or may not work for the sequence of the program either. I mean, we don't need any more unknowns. I mean, we could get the amendment permit in November, let's say, if we don't get it right away. And then at that point, we're dealing with an unknown in the beginning of the contract. We shouldn't be dealing with that at this point.
No, my guess is that the contractor's initial sequence will be to start to work their way in, and then they'll come back probably and do the amended area. I don't think we want to force them to do it up front, partly because of cost ramifications in the early stages of their program. And also, as you point out, there's a chance that we get the permit, but we may not have it on day one. So,
yeah, but when that bid is signed, or excuse me, when that document is created, we need to know exactly where they're starting so that we can actually facilitate and have the marina more open for them.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll get their plan, and as part of the signed document, we'll confirm what the sequence is. If there has to be a little bit of dialogue before, and it doesn't have major cost ramifications, then, it'll be part of the contract. I agree with you on that.
Will, does the gas dock have to be involved in that? Would you have to move the gas dock?
If they're going to that area, it'd be wise to get it all out as soon as they do. Get everything out of the way that we can.
And again, that's a major piece because of fueling. Just a thought.
So as we develop these thoughts prior to the pre-bid meeting, we will need to circle back among ourselves, and if we have a preference, then we need to be able to state that preference. I mean, as a minimum, we want to know what the sequence is from the contractor, but if we actually have a preference and all things are equal, we need to be able to state that, and particularly with respect to like the fuel dock and the amended permit area.
Also, Chris, it's a whole different, I believe it would be a whole different set of machinery.
Yeah, you mean for the amended area?
Yep.
What do you think it would be? I've pondered whether we could actually reach it from the shore, dig along the
It'd be
bulkhead.
a backhoe and a barge.
Yeah,
But Alfred would know better than I.
yeah. And that's another thought to throw out at the pre-bid, that, hey, guys, y'all might want to consider bringing in different type of equipment for that. Again, these are all good thoughts that we'll have to summarize and want to summarize for the pre-bid meeting.
Well, don't forget, Cashman told us they were going to be here with a big piece of equipment, and they were going to dredge right up to Christmas around the clock. The day they got the contract, the big dredge screwed, the little dredge came, and the week before Christmas, nobody was working. So what we're told and what happens, we've got to watch out for.
Yeah.
Because if they had actually worked the week that they didn't before Christmas, they would have finished up the piggyback. The problem is they had to go around the edge, and it was slower going. So they said to hell with it, and because the contract said if they got to their percentage, they were done, we got the short end of that stick.
Which I think leads into a piece that we discussed last time, which has to be implemented this time very strictly, and that is weekly meetings with the contractor, so that we're holding that person accountable.
But Joe, we can only hold them as accountable as the contract allows us to.
Yeah, it's a two-pronged, the weekly meeting for coordination, but the appropriate contract language, something that we can point to and hang our hat. And,
well, Alfred, you
the
just
contract
raised,
has to live by.
Alfred, you just raised the issue as an example of their not working around the clock before Christmas. What I'm saying is, if they make a commitment to work around the clock, or whatever they make a commitment to, at the weekly meetings, that's a way of holding them accountable, rather than having no meetings and just relying on good faith, which I'm opposed to.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with your statement, Joe. I'm just saying that, if you get a yes man who comes to our meetings, we're not going to get too far. If you get somebody who actually understands the program, then you've got a little bit of give and take in the situation. That's all.
Well, isn't that up to us to monitor what they're doing?
I would say so.
Well, that's my point. And one way to do that is to have the weekly meetings. If something comes up in between the weekly meetings, there's nothing that says, we can't have a meeting right away. In our last meeting, Alfred and Chris, as you know, I try to impress upon the engineer that whoever is awarded the contract is working for us. He's not working for the engineer. He's working for the town, and we're paying him millions of dollars. So I don't want to hear from the engineer that, we can't have a conference with him initially. We can't have weekly meetings. And when I raised that, the engineer's response was, well, we can't dictate to him. Nobody's talking about dictating to him. What we're talking about is having frequent meetings to hold him accountable per the contract. Now we have a meeting, Wednesday morning. He didn't come through with the documents on Friday. That's one issue that I think he has to be told is unacceptable. The other issue is, which we've been talking about for months, is the amendment permit, which he has been saying, well, it's not going to be all that difficult because there's not going to have to be a lot of obligation to the regulatory agencies, which there was when he was doing the amendment in Salem, which took, 7 or 8 months. Yet we heard last Wednesday that there was one unexpected thing that came up already. So I think, he has to be told this Wednesday that that's unacceptable. And if he doesn't have a commitment to change it, then I think, we have to let him know how unacceptable it is, and that we may have to talk to Russell Titmus or somebody else at GEI that we're not satisfied. We're one of many clients they have. We know that. He has told us that. But, he has an obligation to us, and I think it needs to be fulfilled.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, very likely time to kick it to upper management, Russell and or others.
I don't want to do that without addressing it directly with him.
Yes.
Let him know where we're coming from and where we might be headed.
That's exactly the right way to go, Joe. You got to tell them first what we're planning. We expect this of you. Otherwise, we have to do something to protect our interests because we're in a limited window to do this work.
And, he works in a very black and white world. And where we're coming from, we don't see it as black and white as he does, because there's gray in there. There's variables. There's things over which we have no control. Like the one he cited last week with the amendment, which came up out of the blue. So, we need, in our own best interest, I think, we need to build in some wiggle room there. We don't want to come down to the wire.
Okay, move on to the next item. Anything else for this before we move on? Okay, funding grants. We have 2 of them at play. One is the one that went in March, Massachusetts Dredging Program. And per their timeline, they should be looking to make their awards probably towards the end of this month, May, possibly early June. So obviously we remain very optimistic and hopeful for that. And then the second one was the SEC grant that was submitted on April the 30th in time for the August 1st review. And that's been received by Ellen Sabula. She's confirmed receipt of it. So that one is also in play.
For Area 2022, Area 2.
Area 2, yes, the dredging costs and the permitting costs. Okay, next, review and update the action item list. I went ahead and updated it. You can see where the updates are in red. As a result of that, several of the items have been closed, so I have shown those as closed. After they're on the list for at least one round showing it's closed. And just as a reminder, I hide the row, but it's always retrievable. So my usual question, are there any new items that people would like to have added to the action item list?
Chris, if I could just for a minute go back to the third item on permitting. If you remember, our lobbyist in our congressional delegation strongly advised us not to consider any mitigation at all with the Army Corps and National Marine Fisheries. Concede nothing. And we know, because the engineer has expressed that to us, that he was opposed to that. He thinks we should enter mitigation. And we let him know that, you know, we are not going to proceed along that avenue. So I mentioned that as a reminder that we're still very much on that track. When we hear things like, well, you know, it's an active shellfish bed, National Marine Fisheries, or, you know, it's a beneficial mud flat because it hasn't been dredged since 1957. You know, we should concede nothing. Let our lobbying efforts by our lobbyists and our congressional delegation run their course. And I think they're going to reveal a good deal. And I do think it's significant that the Army Corps in DC, not in New England, but in DC, has ordered a complete review.
Yeah, I think your recent update on that certainly reinforces that it would not be appropriate at this time to meet with the New England version of Army Corps and Marine Fisheries. We stay on course. Let the congressional delegation and the lobbyists focus on it.
I'm going to ask the question differently. If any of us sitting on this meeting hired an engineer to do something for us, and the engineer told whatever obstacle we were up against, my client would offer mitigation, none of us, I shouldn't say none of it, the majority of us would say, who gave you the power to do that?
His recommendation was to proceed with the meeting that Army Corps had arranged or was in the process of arranging. And that's the one, to Joe's point, where we said, no, it makes no sense to have that meeting now. It would just confuse the issue because they're really being handled at a higher level.
Well, he presented at that time the 5-point Army Corps agenda for that meeting. You know, we weren't consulted as to what we wanted as an agenda. The Army Corps dictated it, and 90% of it was, well, Wellfleet, you know, intermitigation with us, and what are you going to give us? We took one look at that, and I think we decided as a group, you know, we're not going to be a party to that.
Right.
But my statement in it is our engineer has to also take that same attitude.
Well, you know, I think that's a good point. I don't know that he has to. He chose to. And we know probably why, as he expressed to us in the past, he has many clients with the Army Corps. And it's important to him to maintain what he called a good working relationship with the Army Corps. Make no waves and let them dictate. And the bottom line that I come back to is we are paying a contractor ultimately to do millions of dollars of work. We are the client, not Army Corps, not the engineer. The engineer is providing a service to us that's required, but we are the client, and I think we need to act like the client. That we have a lot of weight and a lot of leverage. So I think this Wednesday's meeting is a really important one.
Yes, no, I agree.
I think he might
We'll have
also,
the Wednesday meeting with GEI.
I think also this Wednesday, he might be looking for his contract too. So we have to,
Well, we can tell him that we're moving on it and it should be fairly soon. Per Harry Turkanian's wishes, this Wednesday was when he wanted me to get back to him. So I'm going to contact him and tell him we're ready to work with him on that to finalize it. I think that's a reasonable thing to offer to him.
So Joe, in past dealings with Turkanian, I know he's recently imposed into this position of help. Has he ever told you that he feels that he will be able to, by some date that they may have given you informally, that he could be able to put this together, and it's going to take him 3 days, 3
No, he
weeks?
wouldn't be pinned down. 2 weeks ago, when I made the request, at that time, the TA had been dismissed, the accountant resigned, and he was working 10 hours a day to help get things in order on the budget and all the warrant articles. And he told me 2 to 3 weeks, he would have daylight. But this isn't a huge contract, and we're ready to go. So I'm going to talk to him on Wednesday and pin him down on a timetable so that we can move forward on it. But I haven't heard the engineer complain to us about, the contract yet.
Do you know if Turkanian was involved in writing up the contract for the last dredging of the area? Because that was about 10 years ago.
In 2002,
Right.
I don't know the answer to that.
Because
might
that
have
would have been valuable because it's comparable to what we're looking at today.
I don't know if the RFP is comparable because I haven't looked at the one from 2002, but he's very competent, and I have a lot of faith in his ability to analyze what we're looking at and to blend in our concerns and see what he recommends.
So it's 2 to 3 weeks. He thought he'd see the light at the end of the tunnel.
No, that was 2 weeks ago when he told me that.
Okay.
That's why 2 weeks are up this Wednesday, and I'm going to talk to him then.
But that's Skip, that's not for the dredging contract itself. We're talking the contract to GEI to
GEI.
documents.
Right.
Yeah,
GEI helps us know exactly what we set up in timetables.
Yeah.
Well, the timetable, we developed, which everybody has a copy of. I do think that it should be working with GEI, but ultimately, we need to put our stamp of approval on that contract and hold them to it. What else we have, Chris?
Next meeting, staying on Monday nights, would put us either the 17th or the 24th. Any thoughts on either of those dates?
24th looks good.
Go ahead.
24th looks good. Is there any reason for us to meet next week?
Well, I would think we'd like to hear back from Joe a little bit, maybe where he,
Good point. Good point, Skip.
and we'll also have some of the information from this Wednesday's meeting.
So the 17th.
That's what I would vote for.
I think when Harry does make a commitment to start working on it, he's probably going to need a week reasonably, hopefully shorter, because it's not a huge contract.
I may have a problem on the 17th, but as long as we can get a quorum elsewhere, there's no reason not to have it on the 17th.
Why not look at the 18th?
I have a problem on the 18th too. I think 17th. I mean, I can plan to access remote on the 17th.
Yeah, and if it can't, I'll chair it.
Yeah, but I will be somewhere where there's connectivity, so. Okay, so we'll make it 17th, 7 o'clock.
Roger that.
Okay, that brings us to motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Looking for a second.
Skip.
I second the motion.
All right, vote. Alfred,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Skip,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Chris, aye. 5-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, yes, thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Good
Have a
night.
good evening.